Before that? What did you say to him before that? The judge smiled. It is not necessary, he said, that the principals here be in possession of facts concerning their case, for their acts will ultimately accommodate history with or without their understanding. But it is consistent with notions of right principle that these facts, to the extent that they can be readily made to do so, should find a repository in the witness of some third party. Sergeant Aguilar is just such a party, and any slight to his office is but a secondary consideration when compared to divergences in that larger protocol exacted by the formal agenda of an absolute destiny. Words are things. The words he is in possession of, he cannot be deprived of. Their authority transcends his ignorance of their meaning. The black was sweating. A dark vein in his temple pulsed like a fuse. The company had listened to the judge in silence. A few smiled. A half-witted killer from Missouri guffawed softly like Anna. The judge turned again to the sergeant, and they spoke together, and the judge and Heckrist to where the crate stood in the courtyard, and the judge still showed him one of the pistols, explained its workings with great patience. The sergeant's men had risen and stood waiting. At the gate, the judge doled coins into Aguilar's palm, and he shook hands formally with each racked charge, and complimented them upon their military bearing, and they exited into Festra. At noon that day, the partisans rode out, each man armed with a pair of the pistols, and took Therode up country as told. The outriders returned in the evening, and the men dismounted for the first time that day, and recruited their horses in the sparse swale while Glanton conferred with the scouts. Then there rode on until dark and made camp. Toadvine and the veteran and the kid squatted at a small move from the fires. They did not know that they were set forth in that company in the place, 3 men slain in the desert. They watched the Delawares, of whom there were a number in the party, and they too sat somewhat apart, crouched on their heels. One pounding Kafibianson, a buckskin with a rock, while the other stared into the fire with eyes as black as gun bears. That night the kid would see one of them sort with his hand among the absolute embers for a right coal with which to light his pipe. They were about in the morning before daybreak, and they caught up and saddled their mounts as soon as it was light enough to see. The jagged mountains were pure blue in the dawn, and everywhere birds twittered, and the sun, when it rose, caught the moon in the west, so that they lay opposed to each other across the earth. The sun white hot, and the moon a pale replica, as if they were the ends of a common bore beyond whose terminals burned worlds past all reckoning. As the riders came up through the mesquite and pyracantha, single file in a light clank of arms and chink of biterings, the sun climbed and the moon set, and the horses and the dew-soaked mules commenced to steam in flesh and in shadow. Toadvine had fallen in with a fugitive from Vandeman's land named Bathcat, who had come west on leg bail. He was from Wales by birth, and he had but 3 fingers to his right hand, and few teeth. Perhaps he saw in Toadvine a fellow fugitive, earless and branded felon who had coasted in life much as had he, and he offered to wager as to which Jackson would kill which. "I don't know them boys," said Toadvine. "How do you think then?" Toadvine spat quietly to one side and looked at the man. "I wouldn't want to bet," he said. "Not a gaming man. Depends on the game. The blackie will do for him. Take your odds." Toadvine looked at him. The necklace of human ears he wore looked like a string of dried black figs. He was big and raw-looking, and one eyelid sagged, where a knife had severed the small muscles there, and he was furnished with gear of every class. The fine with the shoddy He wore good boots, and he carried a handsome rifle bound with German silver, but the rifle was slung in Aquatov bootleg, and his shirt was in tatters, and his hat rancid. Eve. Not hunted the Aborigines afore, said Bathcat. Who says it? I know it. Toadvine didn't answer. You'll find them right lively. So I hear. The Vandy Menlander smiled. Much has changed, he said. When I first come into this country there was savages up on the San Saba, had hardly seen white men. They come into our camp and shared our mess with them, and they couldn't keep their eyes off our knives. Next day they brought whole strings of horses into camp to trade. We didn't know what they wanted. They had knives of their own, such as they was. But what it was, you see, was they'd never seen sawed bones in a stew before. Toadvine glanced at the man's forehead, but the man's hat was pushed down, almost to his eyes. The man smiled, and forked the hat back slightly with his thumb. The print of the hatband lay on his forehead like a scar, but there was no mark only on the inside of his lower arm, waist ear, tattooed a number which Toadvine would see in a Chihuahua bathhouse, and again when wood cut down the man's torso where it hung, skewered by its heels from a tree. Enthusiasts of Pimeria Alta. In the fall of that year, they rode up through Cholia and Nopal, a dwarf forest of spined things, through a stone gap in the mountains, and down among blooming Artemisia and aloe. They crossed a broad plain, half desert, grass dotted with palmilla. On the slopes were gray stone walls that followed Theragilians down to where they lay broached and tumbled upon the plain. They did not noon, nor did they siesta, and the cotton eye of the moon squatted at broad day in the throat of the mountains to the east, and they were still riding when it overtook them at its midnight meridian, sketching on the plain below a blue cameo of such dread pilgrims clanking north. They spent the night in the corral of a hacienda, where all-night men kept watchfires burning on thothoteyas or roofs. 2 weeks before this, a party of campesinos had been hacked to death with their own hoes and partly eaten by hogs, while the Apaches rounded up what stock would rive and disappeared into the hills. Glanton ordered a goat killed, and this was done in the corral, while the horses shied and trembled, and in the flaring light of the fires, the men squatted and roasted the meat, and ate it with knives, and wiped their fingers in their hair, and turned, in toe-sleep, upon the beaten clay. At dusk of the third day, they rode into the town of Kurulatos, the horses shuffling through thick ash, and the sun glaring redly through the smoke. The smelter chimneys were ranged against an ashen sky, and the globy lights of the furnaces glowered under the dark of the hills. If that rained in the day, and the window lights of the low mud houses were reflected in pools along flooded road, out of which great dripping swine rose moaning before the advancing horse-like oafish demons routed from a fen. The houses were looped and parapeted, and the air was filled with the fumes of arsenic. The people had turned out to see the Texans. They called them, standing solemnly along the way, and noting the least of their gestures, with looks of awe, looks of wonder. Thank you so much for watching. Truly, the fact that you stayed until the end of this video says something important about you. It shows that you care, that you're hungry, that somewhere deep inside, you believe you're meant for more, and you're ready to take the small steps to get there. The blood meridian isn't just a concept, it's a way of living. It's a quiet power that works in the background, shaping your future through the choices you make every single day. Most people ignore it. They think one small decision doesn't matter, but you're learning the truth, that every small decision matters, more than you can imagine. It's easy to overlook the power of reading just 1 page a day, walking for 10 minutes, saying no to junk food, putting your phone away and focusing, saving a single penny. But those tiny steps, the ones that seem so simple, even invisible, they build momentum, and momentum builds results. Greatness doesn't arrive in some grand moment. It's crafted in the quiet, in the routine, in the choices that no one else sees. And if you stick with those small steps, if you keep showing up when no one claps, if you keep believing when progress feels invisible, one day, the results will speak for themselves. So today, I want to leave you with a reminder. You don't need to change everything overnight. You just need to keep doing the small things right. Read that book. Say no to that distraction. Take that walk. Be kind to that person. Be patient with yourself. Every one of those actions is a brick, and together, they build the life you're dreaming of. If this video gave you even a little push of inspiration, then don't let it stop here. Like the video, subscribe for more content like this, and share it with someone you care about. Someone who's maybe just one idea away from turning their life around. Your story is still being written, and the pen is in your hand. Thanks again for watching. Keep growing, keep believing, and never forget, your blood meridian begins now.